and welcome to our Webinar Wednesday series. Today we are covering a two-part session on 8A certification. So right now we are covering the certification checklist, and then at 12:30 we will get into the timing of the 8A certification. That's a separate webinar with a separate log on and dial in. And you can find those on our website. So thanks everybody for joining us today. Let's get started here with our introduction. And we do host these webinars every Wednesday. They are complimentary. There's no fee to attend. And we bring in various government experts, attorneys, accountants, and other industry professionals to discuss government contracting topics. All of the sessions are recorded, so you can find those typically on our website. I'd say by tomorrow or typically by Friday. And same thing on our YouTube channel where you'll find over, I think it's now about 150, maybe even 200 government contracting complimentary webinars. We do not take questions. We try to keep these pretty short and simple. So if you do have questions about any of the webinars that we've covered or today's session, you can certainly contact us and we'll be happy to take your questions one by one. We do offer newsletter and webinar advertising. Our newsletter goes out every Monday at 11 o'clock Eastern, and we reach over 15,600 unique government contracting subscribers. We do offer webinar advertising as well, and you can contact Mallory Flowers for more information. Speaking of advertising, today's advertiser is AccuTrack. And you can see here from the slide that they are a small 8A women-owned small business, and they help government contractors with DCAA audits, budget and forecasting, cost allocation, your basic bookkeeping and reporting, as well as time tracking and payroll. You can find more about AccuTrack on their website, which is accutrack.biz, and their phone number is listed there as well. So please contact AccuTrack for any of the services that you see there on the screen. A little bit about us. We do provide services for government contractors. We work with both product and service companies, domestic and foreign, small and large. Our services include some of the things that you see listed there, including GSA schedules, 8A certification, which we're talking about today, proposal writing, pricing, contract compliance, reporting, administration, and then just your basic business development, marketing, and sales. More about our services you can find on our website, and you can usually find webinars on any of these topics as well. Just a brief blurb about myself, but more importantly, let's just dig into today's topic, which is the SBA, Small Business Administration 8A Compliance Checklist. So let's first, before we really get into the nitty-gritty details, let's talk about what the certification is. As you can well imagine, it is only reserved for small businesses. So large businesses or their subsidiaries typically will not be allowed in the program. There are exceptions to Alaska Native corporations and the other natives, but you must also be socially and economically disadvantaged. It's not one or the other. You need to prove that you have both of those. And it's a pretty, I'll say, drawn out application process, but both of those will need documentation as well as the small business documentation. It's a 9-year program. It's not an 8-year program. Sometimes people think it's 8 years simply because of the 8A, but that's the section that it falls in within the regulations is Section 8A. But it is a 9-year program, and 9 years may seem like a long time, but it really goes by fast, and our webinar at 12:30 will really focus in on that timing and why too many companies, we think, pull the trigger prematurely. So year 1 through 4 is really the development stage where you've got hopefully a full pipeline and you're capturing opportunities and securing contracts and working as a joint venture or a mentor-protégé or direct recipient of a contract from the government. And 5 to 9, if you think of a bell curve, should really be you're kind of going down the slope on the right-hand side there, which is the transition phase. You should be looking for new entrants within the 8A program or companies that would potentially be pursuing 8A certification that fall within your NAICS code, that you can start building relationships with. So once you graduate, you can hand the baton back to them and work with them to continue the relationships that you've built over the 9+ years. So again, you don't want to wait for that year one to start developing relationships with who's ever going to be purchasing from you. You really want to have that in your pipeline before you start the certification. Little spoiler alert here, it is a one-time certification, so you're basically once and done, meaning that if you are running, let's just say, an IT professional services firm, and you say, hey, I'm going to go for the 8A certification, you take your company down the path, you get certified, and whether you bang it out of the park and do, a ton of business through the using your 8A certification, or even if you do nothing, zero, and there are plenty of companies, unfortunately, out there that fall into that bucket. So let's say a couple years later, you graduate or your business gets sold or whatever it is, and you decide, I'm going to start a new business. I'm going to start a HVAC business. So completely different from your IT services business. You give it a new company name. Instead of being incorporated in Delaware, you decide to get incorporated in Arizona. You're doing all your work out on the West Coast with, again, a new tax ID number, a new company name, and completely different services. And you scratch your head and you say, hey, I think I want to pursue the 8A certification again. Well, again, here, spoiler alert, you cannot. It's basically once and done. So that certification is, I'll say, more or less tied to the business owner who qualifies as socially and economically disadvantaged and runs a small business, along with other components that we'll talk about in just a moment. So again, before you decide to pursue this, you really want to make sure that it is that you're 150% in, that you meet and exceed the requirements, and that the timing is right. So some of the benefits, why does everybody want to pursue the 8A certification? Well, it's a bridge, it's a contract vehicle, it's a mechanism or a way for the government to get to you. It makes you attractive because they can then, we'll say, check a box, comply or stating that they are working towards meeting their small business goals. And there are certain set-aside contracts just for the 8As. It's kind of a, we'll say, negotiation is the two-way street. If there's enough 8As that can do the work for the contract, it can be set aside for 8A. Or sometimes the government, and so you can, we'll say, quote unquote, lobby to get those contracts set aside. Other times the government does their market research, which is part of the FAR requirements, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, and they simply set aside 8A contracts. There's also the 8A sole source, meaning that there is only one 8A out there that can do that type of work, and those are highly coveted contracts. And then you certainly have your advantages to being a subcontractor because the large businesses can parse out a portion of their work to you. You're more attractive to them if you do have contract vehicles, set aside checkboxes, including this 8A certification, and benefits obviously to all the rest that I've got listed there, the Mentor-Protégé, joint ventures, and teaming. I will make one note here. As far as being more attractive to the buyers, whether it's a large prime contractor or the government directly, nobody is ever going to contract with you simply because you are an 8A certified business. Never lead with just your certification. The reason the government or a prime contractor will work with you is because of your qualifications, your experience, your past performance, whatever it is you're bringing to the table, your value. The 8A, the GSA schedule, the hub zone certification, anything else that is just a feather in your cap, it's icing on the cake. You still need to have the cake and all the special ingredients on the inside. So again, another reason not to pursue it to too early in the life cycle of your business, you really want to make sure, again, that the timing is right. So we'll now move on to the actual qualifications. As I mentioned earlier, no surprise here, you must be a small business as defined by SBA standards. And these have recently been updated through the NDAA, and there's a webinar on that. As far as small businesses, the way that small businesses are defined is, well, let's just use the old example, which would be your average last 3 years revenue, and that is going to be based on your industry. So sometimes your industry code or your NAICS code will either have a number designated to it, meaning 15 million, or it may have number of employees. So for example, a construction company, small business set aside may be 50 million, where professional services may be 18 million. So you need to make sure that whatever your primary NAICS code, your industry code is, that you are falling within those parameters. When I mentioned the NDAA, that's the National Defense Authorization Act, they used to, as I said earlier, take the last 3-year average. What the NDAA has done is now updated that to say that the small business standards will now be using a 5-year average. So that actually works in the benefit for small businesses for the probably majority of cases. So keep that in mind and check the SBA standards for your specific NAICS code. You can find those on the SBA website and also, I believe, the Commerce Department website. Okay, qualifications continued. Now we're going to talk about ownership and control. The business must be majority owned by a particular individual, and that person must be a U.S. citizen, full-time, and actually working and involved in the business. It can't be somebody's wife that has a full-time job elsewhere, or somebody's husband that qualifies as some sort of minority but is retired or is not involved or controlling the business. If it's a 50-50 business, that's 50% owned by one person and 50% by the other, that will not work. One person needs to be a dominant shareholder in the company. And there is a lot of fraud in the 8A certification process, so you want to make sure, again, that that person that is pursuing the 8A certification is fully functioning and is well aware of everything that is happening in the business versus using somebody's spouse. Number 3, this person must be socially and economically disadvantaged. And so you're going to have to pass both litmus tests. It's not one or the other, or we use one owner for social and the other for economic. It is, again, one owner, the 51% shareholder, and proof must be provided. So how do you prove the social disadvantage? That is going to be any of the descriptors there. If you fall into any of those categories, again, documentation, paperwork will be required for that. And then for the economic disadvantage, there is a narrative portion to the application. You'll provide your personal financials. And if you are married, you'll provide separate financials for the spouse so that they have, SBA can review then both. And continuing on the economic, you'll also provide the last 3 years income, the fair for your business, the fair market value of all of your assets, your personal net worth, that's obviously your assets and liabilities, and any transfers that you have made to immediate family members, transfers of wealth, stock, any assets, and also disclosure of any retirement accounts that you may have. And that will give SBA a picture. You'll also look at the income received from the firm, which will be in your financials, any reinvestments. So if you're a S Corp, and then also your tax payments. Economic continued here, and the three big pieces are that your assets cannot exceed $4 million. Your personal income cannot exceed $250,000, and that is a 3-year average. And then your adjusted net worth must be less than, that should actually say $250K, and I'll make sure to update that slide with the typo there. That 4 should actually be a dollar sign. So you want to make sure, again, that before you go down this path that you run these numbers and that you meet, preferably exceed these requirements. And there's more that we're going to go through, but you certainly can ask for waivers in this program. As in any other government certification or program, there's always going to be exceptions and waivers. We prefer to work with customers who, again, meet but preferably exceed those requirements to ensure a smooth process as far as submitting applications. Some other pieces of information that go into your package will be demonstrating good character, that your business has potential to be successful within the government marketing using the 8A certification. This is one piece that I really like next, is the business diversification. You cannot have more than 70% reliance on one customer. So let's say you are currently doing work with as a sub to Lockheed or Northrop, or maybe you've got a direct government contract that was simply awarded to you because you were a small business and it went out for a competitive bid and your proposal won. If 70% of the company revenue is coming from that entity, SBA will take a second look there. So it's, again, just a good business practice to have diversification of your client base. Maybe a mix of some commercial, meaning just straight commercial, nothing to do with government. Maybe you've got some associations that you work with, universities, even state and local, which will be on a different fiscal year cycle. They're not going to experience many of the hiccups that we do with federal government, with shutdowns, continuing resolution, and those sort of things. And their fourth quarter will be at a different time period when you'll see a lot of the spikes. So diversification, I think, is very important, and it obviously plays a key role here in the 8A certification. And as mentioned earlier in the spoiler alert, you cannot have been an 8A previously. So all of these things, we'll say, carry pretty much the same amount of weight. And so let's go through the required forms. And I can certainly read these slides to you, but I'm sure you guys can read them yourselves. You obviously want your tax returns for both the company and your personal, your financial statements, basically all of your company contracts. Again, they're going to be looking again at do you have diversification? Do you have a good business plan? Your lease agreements. So how long are you tied into any leases? What is the debt to income ratio look like? Your banking accounts, hopefully those are pretty simplified. And additional forms here, you're going to demonstrate the ownership. So who has 51% or more of the company business, and that will be the individual that is pursuing the 8A certification. State filing, so where did your business incorporate or set up as an LLC, or what is your legal status? Any of your bylaws and minutes showing that the main owner is, again, in control. Your social disadvantage, that's typically a narrative. And then the economic disadvantage, we went through all of the items that are required there. For the good character, the background on all the principals, anybody involved in the business, as well as all of their financials. And then you want to make sure that there aren't any additional required forms or any changes that SBA has made to the certification process. So I'd say in conclusion, the 8A certification is certainly a coveted and desired certification by many small businesses, but I think they often get too excited and think that as soon as they get the 8A that It's going to mean their phone's going to be ringing off the hook and contracts are going to be easy to come by. Just like anything else, you're not going to win contracts simply because the government or a large business can check a box saying that they awarded a portion of the contract to you as a small business. They're going to be contracting with you because of your capabilities, because of your past performance, because of the value that you're bringing to the table, because of the services that you provide that you do very, very well. And the 8A is simply just an extra. It's an added bonus. It certainly will limit the competition, particularly for the 8A set-aside contracts. But all in all, you really want to make sure that timing the certification works to your advantage, that you do have a full pipeline, that you understand government contracting, and more, which we will be discussing at 12:30 today. Again, that is a separate link and a separate webinar. So thanks for joining us. And if you do have any questions about the certification, you want somebody to review your package before you submit it, or it's been submitted and you've gotten some pushback from SBA with their questions, or if you've been rejected and want to resubmit, we can certainly help you with that. So once you do have your package together, you do electronically submit through the SBA portal, which was listed there. But if you do have questions, please feel free to contact us directly, and we'll be happy to walk you through the process. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us, and hopefully you'll log back on at 12:30 for the SBA certification, when to pull the trigger. Thank you.